Daniel Harper slammed both fists on the mahogany desk so hard the coffee cup shattered on the floor. "You're blaming me?" Victoria Hale didn't flinch. She slid the termination letter across the desk like it was nothing. Like he was nothing. "Sign it, Daniel. Security is waiting." Outside that office, his 8-year-old daughter sat on a cold leather chair, clutching a candy cane, waiting for her daddy to take her home for Christmas. He signed. He walked out. He took his little girl's hand. But what Victoria didn't know, what nobody in that building knew, was that Daniel had proof. And proof doesn't die just because you fire the man holding it. Before you hear what happened next, drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the rest. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. Daniel Harper had not slept in 4 days. 4 days of pulling transaction records. 4 days of cross-referencing account numbers that didn't match. 4 days of staring at a screen full of numbers that told him something was deeply, dangerously wrong inside Northbridge Capital. He sat at his desk on the 14th floor, the only light on the entire level still burning at 9:47 on Christmas Eve. His coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago. His eyes ached. His back was stiff. But he couldn't stop, because the numbers were screaming. $40 million. Gone. Routed through a series of overnight trades that no one in his department had authorized. Trades executed between 2 and 4 in the morning, when the building was empty, when compliance systems were running on skeleton protocols, when nobody was watching. Except Daniel had been watching. He picked up his phone and dialed the only number he trusted inside that building. Marcus. Marcus Bell, his closest colleague, answered on the second ring.
"Dan, it's Christmas Eve. What are you still doing there?"
"I found it." Silence on the other end.
"Found what?"
"The gap. The 40 million. Marcus, it wasn't a system error. Somebody moved that money on purpose. I've got timestamps. I've got login credentials. And they don't belong to anyone on my team." Marcus exhaled slowly.
"Dan, listen to me. You need to be very careful with what you're saying right now."
"I'm saying someone inside this company committed fraud, and they're using my department as a cover." "Have you told anyone?" "I sent 3 emails to Leonard Cross last month. Risk reports, internal memos. I flagged every single anomaly."
"And?"
"Nothing. Complete silence." Marcus paused.
"Leonard Cross is the Vice President of Finance, Dan. He's Victoria Hale's right hand. If he's not responding to you, there's a reason."
"Yeah, and I think the reason is that he's the one doing it." Another silence, longer this time.
"Daniel, go home. Pick up Emily. Have Christmas with your daughter.
Do not send another email tonight. Do not talk to anyone. We'll figure this out after the holidays." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "You're probably right."
"I am right. Go home."
Daniel saved every file. He backed up everything to his personal drive. He printed key documents and slipped them into his bag. Then he shut down his computer and headed for the elevator. He didn't know that 2 floors above him, a very different conversation was already happening. Victoria Hale sat behind her desk on the 16th floor. The corner office, floor-to-ceiling glass, the Manhattan skyline behind her like a crown she'd earned the hard way. 22 years she'd run Northbridge Capital, built it from a mid-tier investment firm into a name that made Wall Street pay attention. She was sharp. She was disciplined. She didn't get here by being sentimental. And right now,
She was furious. Leonard Cross sat across from her, legs crossed, hands folded. Calm. Too calm. 40 million, Leonard. I know. How? He slid a folder across her desk. It traces back to Harper's department. The trades were executed using credentials assigned to his team. The risk management protocols he was supposed to enforce were bypassed. The exposure accumulated over 8 weeks. Victoria opened the folder. Her jaw tightened as she scanned the pages. He had one job: monitor risk exposure, keep the trades within parameters. And instead, $40 million evaporated under his watch. Leonard nodded. I've been reviewing his performance for weeks. Inconsistent reports, late filings, and frankly, his personal situation has been affecting his focus. He's a single father. His wife passed 2 years ago. I've tried to be patient, but this level of negligence can't be overlooked. Victoria looked up. You're recommending termination? I'm recommending you protect this company.
If the board finds out about this loss and sees that we kept the responsible party on staff, they'll come after you, Victoria. Not him. You. She stared at the numbers. Leonard watched her without blinking. He already knew what she would do. He'd spent 3 weeks making sure the trail led exactly where he wanted it to lead. Every falsified timestamp, every rerouted login, every deleted email that pointed away from himself and toward a man who had no political allies, no executive protection, and no idea what was coming. Daniel Harper was perfect. A widowed father, a mid-level analyst, quiet, hard-working, the kind of man who solved problems instead of making noise, the kind of man no one would fight for. Victoria closed the folder. Call him back up here. Tonight? Right now. I want this handled before the holiday. I don't want it leaking to the press. Leonard stood up. I'll have security bring him. Leonard? He turned. This is the right call? He looked at her with absolute certainty. This is the only call. Daniel was in the parking garage when the security guard found him. Mr. Harper, Mrs. Hale wants to see you upstairs. Daniel's stomach dropped. He looked at his phone. Emily's babysitter had texted 20 minutes ago. She's asking when you're coming. Should I bring her to you? He'd texted back, 15 minutes, leaving now. He looked at the guard. Can it wait? No, sir. Daniel followed him into the elevator. His mind raced. Maybe it was about his reports. Maybe she'd finally read them. Maybe Leonard had forwarded them, and Victoria wanted to act. For a brief, foolish moment, he actually felt hopeful. The elevator opened on 16. The hallway was dark except for the light spilling from Victoria's office. He walked in. Victoria sat behind her desk. Leonard stood near the window, and between them, on the desk, was a single document. Victoria didn't stand. Sit down, Daniel. He sat. I'll be direct. We've completed an internal review of the losses in your division. $40 million in unauthorized trade exposure over the past 2 months. The credentials traced to your team. The risk protocols you were responsible for were not enforced. Daniel's blood went cold. Miss Hale, that's not what happened. The evidence is clear. No, it's not. I've been sending reports for weeks. I flagged every one of those trades. I sent emails directly to Mr. Cross documenting the anomalies. I requested an independent audit. None of it was acknowledged. He turned to Leonard. Tell her. I sent you those reports. You know I did. Leonard's face was a mask of professional concern. Daniel, I understand this is upsetting, but I never received any reports from you regarding these specific trades. If you sent them, they never reached my office. Daniel stared at him. His mouth opened, then closed. He felt the floor tilt beneath him. That's not true. I'm sorry, Daniel. That is not true. I have copies. I have timestamps. I have every email I ever sent you. Victoria raised her hand. Mr. Harper, the investigation is complete. The board has been briefed. This is not a discussion. She pushed the document toward him. This is your termination agreement. We're offering you a standard severance. You'll have 30 days of continued health coverage. I suggest you sign it. Daniel looked at the paper. His hands were trembling. I tried to stop this. I tried to tell someone. And you're firing me? Victoria's voice was flat. You had a responsibility to protect this firm's assets. You failed. I'm making the decision that protects everyone else. What about my daughter? The room went silent. I have an 8-year-old girl. My wife is gone. I am all she has. And you're doing this on Christmas Eve? Leonard shifted by the window. Victoria's expression didn't change. Sign the document, Daniel. He looked at her for a long time. Something in his chest broke. Not loudly, not with drama, but quietly. The way a man breaks when he's been carrying too much for too long, and the last thing holding him up gets pulled away. He picked up the pen. He signed. He stood. I want you both to know something, he said. His voice was steady now, dangerously steady. I did everything right. I documented everything. I warned everyone I was supposed to warn. And you chose not to listen. He looked directly at Leonard Cross. You know what you did. Leonard didn't blink. Daniel turned and walked out. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor. The lobby was decorated for Christmas. A massive tree stood in the center, covered in white lights. Holiday music played softly through the speakers. The security guard at the front desk nodded at him, not knowing. And there, sitting on the leather bench near the entrance, was Emily. The babysitter had brought her. She was wearing her red coat. Her small legs dangled above the floor. She was holding the candy cane he'd given her that morning. When she saw her father, she jumped down. Daddy! He knelt. She threw her arms around him, and he held her so tight that for a moment, nothing else existed. Not the cardboard box in his hand, not the termination letter in his coat pocket, not the security camera watching him from above. Just her. Are we going home now? She asked. Yes, sweetheart. We're going home. Why do you have a box? He paused. I'm bringing some things from my desk, that's all. She looked at his face. Children see what adults hide. She didn't ask another question. They walked out through the revolving door. The snow was falling. The city was lit up with Christmas. Taxis honked. People hurried past with shopping bags and laughter. Daniel stood on the sidewalk with his daughter's hand in his and the weight of everything he'd just lost pressing down on his chest like concrete. Emily tugged his hand. Daddy, can we still make cookies tonight? He looked down at her, and despite everything, despite the rage, the injustice, the fear of what tomorrow would bring, he smiled. Yeah. We're still making cookies. They walked to the subway together, father and daughter, one fired, one innocent, both stepping into an uncertain night. The apartment in Queens was small. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a window that looked out at a brick wall. The radiator clanked like it was angry. The Christmas tree in the corner was barely 4 feet tall, decorated with ornaments Emily had made at school. Paper snowflakes, glitter stars, a lopsided angel on top made from a toilet paper roll. It was everything Daniel could afford, and it was home. He put Emily to bed at 10, read her the same Christmas story she asked for every year, watched her eyes get heavy, pulled the blanket up to her chin. Daddy? Yeah? Are you sad? He brushed the hair from her face. I'm fine, sweetheart. You don't look fine. He kissed her forehead.
Grown-ups just have big feelings sometimes. But I'm okay. I promise. She nodded. I love you, Daddy. I love you more. She closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep. Daniel walked to the kitchen. He sat down at the table. He opened his laptop, and he stared at the files. Every email he'd sent Leonard Cross, every risk report, every internal memo, every timestamp showing trades executed at 3 a.m. using credentials that didn't belong to his team. It was all there. He hadn't been careless. He hadn't been negligent. He'd done exactly what he was supposed to do. He'd seen the danger, and he'd raised the alarm.
And the man who was supposed to act on those warnings was the same man who created the danger in the first place. Leonard Cross had gambled with company money. When the losses mounted, he needed someone to take the fall, and he chose Daniel, because Daniel was easy to sacrifice. No powerful friends, no executive connections, a single father with a dead wife and a small apartment. The kind of man the system chews up and doesn't think about again. Daniel closed the laptop. He sat in silence. The refrigerator hummed. The radiator clanked. Through the thin wall, he could hear his neighbor's television playing It's a Wonderful Life. He thought about calling a lawyer. He thought about going to the press. He thought about walking back into that building and confronting Leonard Cross in front of everyone. But then he thought about Emily. She needed stability. She needed her father present and functional, not drowning in a legal battle that could take years and cost everything.
She'd already lost her mother. He wouldn't let her lose him, too. So Daniel made a decision. He would be patient. He would keep his evidence safe. And he would wait. Because the truth has a quality that lies do not. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't expire. And sooner or later, it finds a way out. Daniel turned off the light. He walked past the small Christmas tree. He adjusted the lopsided angel on top. Then he went to his daughter's room and sat in the chair beside her bed, watching her sleep. Outside, the snow kept falling on Queens. The city didn't notice. The company didn't care. The man who framed him was probably pouring champagne right now, celebrating a clean escape. But Daniel Harper was still alive. His daughter was safe. And somewhere in his laptop, 47 emails sat waiting. 47 emails that Leonard Cross thought he'd buried. 47 emails that would eventually bring everything crashing down. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. But soon.
3 days after Christmas, Daniel Harper filed for unemployment. The woman behind the counter at the Queen's Workforce Office looked at his paperwork, then looked at him. Northbridge Capital? You worked there? 8 years. Reason for separation? Daniel hesitated. The termination letter said, performance-related dismissal. That was the language Leonard Cross had chosen. Clean. Final. The kind of words that follow a man from one job application to the next, like a scar he can't cover up. They let me go, Daniel said. The woman typed without expression. Any severance? 60 days. Okay, Mr. Harper. You'll receive a determination letter in 7 to 10 business days. If your former employer contests the claim, there'll be a hearing. Daniel nodded. He thanked her. He walked out into the cold. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Bell. Call me when you can. Something's happening. Daniel called him from the subway platform, one hand cupping the phone against the noise. Marcus, what's going on? They're cleaning house, Dan. Victoria brought in an outside consulting firm 2 days ago. They're restructuring the entire risk management division. Everyone on your old team got reassigned. Some got let go. Who? Janet, Paul, Rita from compliance. They're saying it's budget cuts tied to the loss, but it doesn't feel like budget cuts. It feels like they're getting rid of anyone who might ask questions.
Daniel leaned against the tile wall. A train roared past. They're covering their tracks. That's what it looks like. Marcus, I have everything. Every email I sent Cross, every risk report, timestamps, login records, trade confirmations. It's all on my personal drive. I know you do. But Dan, listen to me. Leonard Cross has been in private meetings with Victoria every day since you left. Whatever story he's telling her, she's buying it. And he's not just protecting himself anymore. He's building a wall. If you come forward now, it's your word against the vice president of finance. And right now, you're the guy who got fired for cause. So what do I do? Just wait? I'm saying be smart. You've got a daughter to think about. Don't go to war until you know you can win. Daniel closed his eyes. I hate this. I know. But you're still standing. That counts for something. The call ended. The train arrived. Daniel got on and sat between a woman carrying groceries and a teenager with headphones so loud the bass leaked out like a heartbeat. He stared at his reflection in the dark window and tried to remember the last time he felt like the world made sense. It was before Sarah died. That was the honest answer. 2 years ago, his wife had gone to the doctor for what they thought was a persistent cough. 6 months later, she was gone. Pancreatic cancer. The kind that doesn't negotiate.
After her funeral, Daniel had rebuilt his entire life around two things: his daughter and his work. Emily gave him a reason to wake up. Northbridge gave him a way to provide for her. He wasn't ambitious. He didn't want a corner office. He just wanted to do his job well, pay his bills, and make sure his little girl had what she needed. And he'd done that. For 2 years, he'd done exactly that. Until Leonard Cross decided he was expendable. When Daniel got home, Emily was at the kitchen table drawing with crayons. The babysitter, a college student named Rosa, who lived 2 floors up, was heating soup on the stove. "Hey, kiddo," Daniel said. Emily looked up. "Daddy, I drew our apartment. See? That's the window. That's the Christmas tree. That's you." He looked at the drawing. The figure she'd drawn of him was smiling. "That's really good, Em. Rosa said I could be an artist when I grow up." "You can be anything you want." Rosa grabbed her coat. "She was great today."
Ate lunch, did her reading. "She asked me 3 times when you were coming home." "Thanks, Rosa. Really." After Rosa left, Daniel heated his own bowl of soup and sat across from Emily. She was still drawing. "Daddy, are you going to work tomorrow?" "Not tomorrow, no." "How come?" "My job is changing a little bit. I'm figuring some things out." Emily put down her crayon. "Did they fire you?" The question hit him like a punch. "Why would you ask that?" "Because at school, Tyler's dad got fired, and Tyler said his dad was really sad and watched TV all day." Daniel set down his spoon. "I'm not going to watch TV all day." "Promise?" "Promise." "Okay." She picked up her crayon again. "Because I need you to help me with math. Rosa doesn't know how to do the hard ones." Daniel laughed. It was the first real laugh he'd had in days. It didn't fix anything, but it reminded him that some things still worked the way they were supposed to. That night, after Emily fell asleep, Daniel sat at his laptop again. He organized every piece of evidence he had into a single encrypted folder. 47 emails, 12 risk assessment reports, 6 internal memos, 3 formal requests for independent audit review, all addressed to Leonard Cross, all acknowledged by the company's email server, all ignored. He also had something Leonard didn't know about: the server logs. 3 months ago,
When Daniel first noticed the irregular overnight trades, he'd ask a friend in IT, a quiet guy named Wei Chen, to pull the access logs for the trading terminals. Wei hadn't asked why. He'd just sent the data. Those logs showed that between midnight and 4 a.m., on 18 separate occasions, someone had accessed the trading system using an administrator credential that was assigned to Leonard Cross's office. Not Daniel's team. Not anyone in risk management. Leonard Cross's personal access code. Daniel hadn't included those logs in his emails to Cross. He wasn't stupid. If Cross was the one running the trades, sending him evidence of his own guilt would be handing him the chance to destroy it. So Daniel had kept those logs separate, saved on a thumb drive, locked in a fireproof box in the back of his closet, behind Emily's old baby clothes. He looked at the closet now. The box was still there. The evidence was intact. He closed the laptop and called Marcus one more time. "I need a lawyer," Daniel said. "I know a guy. Corporate whistleblower cases. His name's Ray Donovan." "Not that Ray Donovan. He's in Brooklyn. He's tough and he doesn't scare easy." "Can I trust him?" "He got a junior analyst at Lehman, a 7-figure settlement back in the day. The guy knows how these games work." "Set it up." Done. 2 days later, Daniel sat in a cramped office on Atlantic Avenue, across from Ray Donovan, a heavyset man with silver hair and a handshake that could crush a walnut. The office smelled like coffee and old paper. Ray listened for 45 minutes without interrupting. Daniel walked him through everything: the trades, the timestamps, the emails, the server logs, the termination. Christmas Eve. When Daniel finished, Ray leaned back in his chair. "Let me make sure I understand this. You identified a $40 million fraud. You reported it to the person committing the fraud. He buried your reports. Then he framed you for the loss and got the CEO to fire you." That's exactly what happened. And the CEO didn't verify any of this before she terminated you. She took Leonard's word. She didn't ask me a single question about my reports. She didn't check whether I'd raised concerns. She just signed the paper. Ray tapped his pen on the desk. "Victoria Hale has a reputation. Smart, ruthless. Not the kind of person who makes sloppy decisions." "She made one this time." "Yeah, she did. And that's going to matter." Ray leaned forward. "Here's the thing, Daniel. You have a strong case. Possibly very strong. But right now, Northbridge doesn't know you have this evidence. They think you're a fired analyst licking his wounds. The minute you file a whistleblower complaint, that changes. Leonard Cross will know you're coming. And a man who committed $40 million in fraud is not going to sit still while you expose him." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to be strategic. We file with the SEC first, quietly. We submit the server logs, the emails, everything. We let the regulators start their own investigation. Once the feds are involved, Northbridge can't touch you without it looking like retaliation. That's your shield." "How long will that take?" "Could be weeks, could be months. The SEC doesn't move fast, but they move hard." Daniel rubbed his face. "I have an 8-year-old daughter, Ray. I'm running on unemployment and a 60-day severance that's already half gone. I don't have months." "I understand that, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Whistleblower cases are brutal. They take time. They take endurance. But the evidence you have is real. The timestamps don't lie. The server logs don't lie. And when the SEC sees that a vice president of finance used his own credentials to execute unauthorized trades and then blamed a subordinate, they're going to take that very seriously." Daniel was quiet for a long moment.
My daughter asked me the other day if I got fired. Ray looked at him. She's 8 years old, and she already knows something is wrong. I can't let this define us. I can't let her grow up thinking her father just took it, that he let someone destroy his life and walked away. Then we fight. Then we fight. Ray pulled out a legal pad. I need copies of everything. The thumb drive, the email backups, all of it. We make duplicates. We store them in separate locations. If anything happens to your apartment, if anyone tries to access your devices, we don't lose the evidence. You think they go that far? $40 million, Daniel. People have done a lot worse for a lot less. They spent the next 3 hours building the case file. Ray made 2 copies of the thumb drive. One went into his office safe. The other went to a sealed envelope at his attorney's trust account. The emails were printed, time-stamped, and organized into a binder that Ray locked in his filing cabinet. When they finished, Ray walked him to the door. Daniel, one more thing. Yeah? Don't contact anyone at Northbridge. Not Victoria, not Leonard, not anyone. Let them think you've moved on. The quieter you are, the louder this is going to be when it lands. Daniel nodded. He walked out onto Atlantic Avenue. The January cold hit him like a wall. He pulled his coat tighter and headed for the subway. On the train home, he thought about Leonard Cross. They'd worked in the same building for 8 years. They'd been in the same meetings. They'd nodded at each other in hallways. Leonard had even come to Sarah's memorial service. He'd shaken Daniel's hand and said, "If you ever need anything, my door is open. My door is open." And when Daniel had walked through that door with evidence of fraud, Leonard had smiled, taken the reports, and buried them so deep that by the time Victoria asked what happened, the only story she heard was the one Leonard wanted her to hear. That was the part that burned the most. Not the firing, not the humiliation, not even the financial ruin that was slowly closing in. It was the betrayal. Daniel had trusted the system. He'd followed the rules. He'd done everything a good employee is supposed to do when he sees something wrong. Report it, document it, escalate it. And the system had used him as a shield. He got home at 6. Emily had set the table for dinner. 2 plates, 2 glasses, 2 napkins folded into triangles the way Sarah used to do it. "I made the table pretty," she said. Daniel looked at those 2 place settings and felt something crack inside his chest. "It's beautiful, Em." They ate macaroni and cheese from a box. Emily talked about a book she was reading at school. Daniel listened and nodded and asked questions and pretended that everything was fine. After dinner, she asked if they could watch a movie. They sat on the couch together. She fell asleep against his shoulder halfway through. He carried her to bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. Then he went back to the kitchen and opened his laptop. He started applying for jobs. Financial analyst positions, risk management roles, compliance officer openings. He sent out 12 applications that night. Over the next 2 weeks, he sent out 40 more. Not one callback. He knew why. When a potential employer calls your last company for a reference and hears terminated for performance-related issues in connection with significant financial losses, the conversation ends. The resume goes in the trash. The door closes before you even get to knock. Leonard Cross hadn't just taken his job. He'd poisoned his future. By mid-January, Daniel was cutting expenses everywhere he could. He canceled the internet package and used the library's free Wi-Fi instead. He stopped buying coffee. He clipped coupons for the first time in his life. He found a food bank 3 blocks from Emily's school and went there on a Tuesday morning, wearing a hat pulled low, because some part of him was still ashamed, even though he had nothing to be ashamed of. The woman at the food bank handed him 2 bags of groceries and said, "Merry belated Christmas." He thanked her and walked home carrying canned vegetables and pasta and a jar of peanut butter. And he told himself that this was temporary, that the SEC was reviewing his case, that Ray Donovan was building his file, that justice was coming. But justice doesn't pay rent, and the landlord's notice came on January 23rd. 30 days to catch up or face eviction proceedings. Daniel sat at the kitchen table and stared at that notice for a long time. Emily walked in. "What's that?" "Just a letter from the building. Nothing important." "You always say that when it's important." He looked at her. 8 years old and already too smart for her own good. Sarah's eyes. Sarah's stubbornness. Sarah's way of cutting through nonsense with a single sentence. "Come here," he said. She walked over. He put his arm around her. "Things are a little tight right now, but I want you to know that I'm handling it. You don't have to worry." "I'm not worried, Daddy. I know you always figure things out." Those words almost broke him, because he wasn't sure he could figure this one out. Not alone. Not with every door closing. Not with the man 2 floors up in a glass tower, systematically erasing every trace of the truth. But Daniel didn't let her see that. He smiled. He told her to go do her homework. He waited until she left the room. Then he put his head in his hands and sat there in the silence of that small kitchen, listening to the radiator clank and the neighbor's television murmur through the wall. And he wondered if doing the right thing had ever cost anyone this much. And somewhere, across the river, in a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, Leonard Cross poured himself a glass of scotch, sat down in a leather chair, and smiled. Because as far as he knew, it was over. The scapegoat was gone. The trail was clean. The CEO believed the story. The consulting firm had finished their review and confirmed what Leonard had carefully arranged for them to find. The board was satisfied. The regulators hadn't asked a single question. Leonard raised his glass to the window. "Merry Christmas, Daniel," he said to no one. He drank. He didn't know that 3 blocks from his apartment, a sealed envelope sat inside a lawyer's safe. He didn't know that a copy of his own server credentials was logged and documented and waiting. He didn't know that the SEC had already assigned a case number. And he certainly didn't know that in 6 weeks, the woman he reported to, the woman he'd manipulated into destroying an innocent man, would meet that same man on a frozen highway in the middle of the night. And that meeting would change everything. 6 weeks after Christmas, on the coldest night in February, Victoria Hale's Mercedes died on the shoulder of Interstate 278, just past the Kosciuszko Bridge. The engine didn't sputter. It didn't warn her. One moment she was doing 65, and the next, every light on the dashboard flashed at once, and the car went silent. She coasted to the right lane, then onto the shoulder, and came to a stop with nothing but darkness ahead and headlights streaking past behind her. She sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, trying to process what had just happened. Victoria Hale did not break down on highways. Victoria Hale had a driver for events. She had a service plan that cost more per year than most people's rent. She had control over every detail of her life, because control was the thing she trusted most. And now, she was sitting in a dead car on a freezing bridge in Brooklyn with her phone at 4% battery. She called roadside assistance. The automated system told her the estimated wait time was 90 minutes. She called her driver. No answer. She called her assistant. Voicemail. Her phone died at 3%, mid-dial. Victoria sat in the dark. The temperature inside the car was already dropping. She could see her breath.
She pulled her coat tighter and stared through the windshield at absolutely nothing. 20 minutes passed. Then a pair of headlights slowed behind her. A truck pulled onto the shoulder. Old. Dented. The kind of vehicle Victoria would never have looked at twice in her life. The door opened, and a man got out, zipping his jacket against the wind. He walked to her window and knocked. She lowered it 2 inches. "You okay in there?" he asked. "I've called for assistance. They're on their way."
"How long ago?"
20 minutes.
"In this cold? That's a long wait. Pop the hood, let me take a look."
That's not necessary.
"Ma'am, it's 11 degrees out here. Your engine's off, which means your heat's off. In another 20 minutes, you're going to be in trouble."
Victoria stared at him through the gap in the window.
Something about his face. She couldn't place it in the dark, but something pulled at her memory. "Fine," she said.
She pulled the hood release. The man walked to the front of the car and lifted it. A minute later, he came back to her window. "Your alternator's gone. Battery's dead. I can jump it, but you'll need to drive straight to a shop. It'll die again once you turn it off."
"You can jump-start a Mercedes?"
"A battery's a battery. Doesn't matter what name's on the hood." He pulled his truck forward and connected the cables. 5 minutes later, the Mercedes roared back to life. Heat flooded the cabin. The dashboard glowed. Victoria stepped out of the car, and in the light from both vehicles, she finally saw his face. Her stomach dropped. Daniel Harper. He was already disconnecting the cables, winding them back into a coil. He hadn't said anything, hadn't reacted. Either he didn't recognize her, or he did and chose not to acknowledge it. "Thank you," she said. The words came out stiff, formal. "You're welcome." He closed her hood and walked back toward his truck. "Daniel." He stopped. His back was to her. He stood there for a long moment, then turned around. "You know who I am," she said. "I knew who you were the moment I pulled over." The wind cut between them. A truck blasted past, shaking both vehicles. "Then why did you stop?" Daniel looked at her. His face was calm, not angry, not bitter, just steady, the way a man looks when he's already been through the worst and come out the other side with nothing left to prove. "Because you needed help," he said. Victoria opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She stood there in her $1,200 coat on the shoulder of a freezing highway, and for the first time in as long as she could remember, she had absolutely nothing to say. Daniel got back in his truck. He pulled away. His taillights disappeared into the dark. Victoria stood there for another full minute before she got back in her car. She drove home in silence. No radio, no phone calls, just the hum of the engine and the echo of those 4 words. "Because you needed help." She parked in her building's garage and sat in the car with the engine running. Her hands were shaking, and it wasn't from the cold. She told herself it was nothing, a coincidence, a man she'd fired doing a decent thing. It didn't change the facts. It didn't change the investigation. It didn't change the $40 million. But something was off. Something had been off since Christmas Eve, and she'd pushed it down because pushing things down was what she did. It was how she ran a company. It was how she survived 22 years in an industry that ate people alive. She went upstairs. She poured a glass of wine. She sat at her kitchen table. And for the first time, she let herself think about it. The way Daniel had looked at her in her office that night. Not with rage, not with theatrics, but with something worse. Certainty. The look of a man who knew he was telling the truth and knew it didn't matter. She'd seen that look before. Years ago, early in her career, when she was still a junior analyst. A colleague had been blamed for a trading error that wasn't his. He'd tried to explain. The partners hadn't listened. He'd been let go. 2 months later, the real culprit was caught. But by then, the damage was done. The man who'd been fired had already lost his apartment, his wife had left him, and he'd moved back to Ohio. Victoria had watched that happen. She'd told herself she'd never be the kind of leader who made decisions without verifying the truth. And then she became exactly that. She finished her wine and went to bed. She didn't sleep. 3 weeks later, Victoria attended the annual Northbridge Capital Charity Gala at the Waldorf. It was the company's biggest event of the year. Board members, investors, media, politicians. Everyone in the room had money, and everyone wanted more of it. Victoria moved through the crowd the way she always did. Handshakes, small talk, strategic laughter. She wore a black dress and a practiced smile, and no one in that room would have guessed that she'd been sleeping 3 hours a night since February. The event included a children's program. Employees were invited to bring their families. Kids drew pictures at craft tables while their parents networked. It was good optics. Victoria had approved the budget herself. She was walking past the children's area when a small voice stopped her. "Excuse me." Victoria looked down. A girl, maybe 8 or 9, was standing in front of her. Red coat, dark blonde hair, big, serious eyes. "Hi there," Victoria said. She used her public voice, warm, professional. "Are you the boss?" the girl asked. Victoria smiled politely. "I run the company, yes." "My daddy used to work here." Victoria's smile held, but something behind it shifted. "Oh? What's your daddy's name?" "Daniel Harper." The room didn't actually go quiet. The music kept playing. The conversations kept humming. But inside Victoria's chest, everything stopped. She knelt down to the girl's eye level. "You're Emily. How do you know my name?" "I remember your father. He was a good employee." Emily tilted her head, the way children do when they're deciding whether an adult is telling the truth. "Then how come you fired him?" Victoria's mouth went dry. "That's a complicated situation, sweetheart." "My daddy says it's not complicated. He says he told the truth and nobody listened." Victoria didn't respond. Emily looked at her with those clear, unflinching eyes. "Did someone trick you?" 4 words. A child's question. Simple, direct. The kind of question that adults spend entire careers learning how to avoid. "Did someone trick you?" Victoria felt the floor shift beneath her knees. "I don't know," she said. And it was the most honest thing she'd said in months. Emily studied her face for another moment, then reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "My daddy said I should give this to you if I ever saw you." Victoria took the paper. Her hands were steady, but only because she willed them to be. "He said you should read it when you're alone." Emily turned and walked back to the craft table, where Marcus Bell's wife was watching with wide eyes. Victoria stood up. She held the paper at her side. She walked through the gala with the same composure she always carried. She shook 3 more hands. She posed for a photograph with a board member. She excused herself at exactly 9:15 and walked to her private office on the 16th floor. She closed the door. She unfolded the paper. It was a handwritten note. "Ms. Hale, I sent 47 emails to Leonard Cross between September and December documenting unauthorized overnight trades. He never responded. I requested 3 independent audits. All were denied. The trades were executed using administrator credentials assigned to his office, not mine. I have the server logs. You have my number. Daniel Harper." Victoria read it 3 times. Then she sat down and opened her computer. She pulled up the internal email archive. She searched for Daniel Harper's name. His sent folder was gone, wiped clean during the post-termination system purge, which was standard protocol for dismissed employees. But Victoria knew something about email servers that most executives didn't. Deleting an employee's mailbox removes the visible records, but the metadata, the send logs, the delivery confirmations, the server-side timestamps, those lived on a different system, a system that only the IT infrastructure team could access. She picked up her phone and called James Whitfield, the company's chief technology officer. "James, I need you to pull the mail server delivery logs for Daniel Harper's account, September through December of last year." "Victoria, it's 10 o'clock at night." "I'm aware of the time. What are you looking for?" "I need to know if he sent emails to Leonard Cross during that period. I need timestamps. I need delivery confirmations, and I need them before morning." James paused. "Is there something I should know?" "Not yet. Just get me those logs." She hung up and opened the trading system's audit trail. She searched for the 18 dates Daniel's note referenced, the overnight trades between 2 and 4 a.m. She found them, every single one. She clicked on the first trade, executed at 2:47 a.m. on September 14th. The access credential used was an administrator code. She checked the code against the company's credential registry. It was assigned to the office of the Vice President of Finance, Leonard Cross's office. Victoria clicked on the next trade. Same credential. 2:12 a.m. on September 21st. She checked the third, the fourth, the 8th, the 12th. All 18 trades, same credential. All executed in the middle of the night. All using Leonard Cross's administrative access. Her fingers were trembling now. She pulled up Leonard's expense reports for the same period. Corporate card charges, hotel stays, client dinners, travel receipts. On September 14th, the night of the first unauthorized trade, Leonard had filed an expense report for a dinner in Manhattan that ended at 11 p.m. He was in the city. He had access to the building. He could have been at his terminal at 2:47 a.m. On October 3rd, another trade, Leonard had no travel filed. He was home, in New York. She cross-referenced every date, every trade, every time Leonard was in the city with access to the building. The pattern was undeniable. At midnight, James Whitfield called her back. "Victoria, I found the logs." "And?" Daniel Harper sent 47 emails to Leonard Cross between September 8th and December 20th. All delivered successfully. All received by Cross's server. I can see the read receipts on 31 of them. Leonard opened those emails. Victoria closed her eyes. "He read them," she said. "He read 31 of them. The others were delivered, but I can't confirm they were opened." "But Victoria, there's something else." "What?" On December 22nd, 2 days before Harper was terminated, someone accessed the email server using Leonard's admin credentials and bulk deleted Harper's sent folder. The deletion wasn't done from Harper's account. It was done remotely, from Leonard's workstation. Victoria's hand gripped the phone so hard her knuckles went white. "He destroyed the evidence." "That's what it looks like." "James, I need you to preserve everything you just found. Lock it down. No one accesses it. No one deletes it. No one touches it. Do you understand?" "Victoria, what's going on?" "Leonard Cross committed fraud, and I fired the man who tried to stop it." Silence on the line. "I'll lock it down tonight," James said. Victoria hung up. She sat in her office in the dark. The Manhattan skyline glowed through the windows. The same skyline she'd stared at 1,000 times,
feeling powerful, feeling certain, feeling like she'd earned every inch of this view. And now that view looked different. Because she'd earned it by trusting the wrong man, by moving fast instead of thinking carefully, by signing a termination letter on Christmas Eve without once asking the most basic question a leader should ask. What if I'm wrong? She thought about Daniel standing on that frozen highway, jumper cables in his hands, no bitterness in his voice. Because you needed help. She thought about Emily at the gala, that small, clear voice. Did someone trick you? And she thought about herself. 22 years of building a reputation. 22 years of being the smartest person in the room. 22 years of never doubting her own judgment because doubt felt like weakness, and weakness was something Victoria Hale did not allow. And all it took was one lie from a man she trusted to turn that confidence into a weapon aimed at an innocent person. She had destroyed Daniel Harper's career. She had taken his income. She had made him unemployable. She had done it on Christmas Eve while his daughter waited in the lobby. And she had gone home that night and poured herself a glass of champagne because she believed she had handled a crisis efficiently. That was the word she had used. Efficient. Victoria put her face in her hands, and for the first time in 20 years, she cried. Not the polite, controlled kind of tears that come and go. The real kind. The kind that shake your whole body. The kind that come from somewhere so deep you didn't even know it was there. She cried for Daniel Harper, who did everything right and lost everything anyway. She cried for Emily, who spent Christmas Eve watching her father carry a box out of a building that should have protected him. She cried for herself because she finally understood something she had spent her entire career denying. Intelligence without humility is just arrogance with better vocabulary. And arrogance had cost an innocent man his life. At 1 o'clock in the morning, Victoria wiped her face, straightened her jacket, and picked up her phone. She called the company's outside counsel. I need to report a fraud, internal, senior executive level, and I need to involve the SEC. Victoria, it's 1 a.m. I know what time it is. The Vice President of Finance has been running unauthorized trades using company funds. He framed a subordinate. I terminated that subordinate based on fabricated evidence. I need this handled immediately. How much are we talking about? 40 million. Silence. I'll assemble the team. We'll be at your office by 7. Make it 6. She hung up. Then she pulled out the crumpled piece of paper Emily had given her. She read Daniel's handwriting one more time. She picked up her phone again and found his number in the old HR files. She almost called, but she stopped. Because what do you say to a man whose life you ruined? What words could possibly be enough? Victoria put the phone down. She'd figure out what to say. But first, she had to do what she should have done on Christmas Eve. Listen to the evidence, follow the truth, and hold the right person accountable. She opened her laptop and began writing a detailed report for the board, documenting every piece of evidence she had found, starting with the server logs and ending with the 31 emails Leonard Cross had read and ignored from a man who was trying to save the company. She wrote until dawn, and when the first light came through her office windows, she read the report one final time, printed it, signed her name at the bottom, and placed it in a folder marked Confidential, Board of Directors. Underneath her signature, she added one line by hand. The responsibility for this failure is mine. The legal team arrived at Northbridge Capital at 5:58 a.m. 4 attorneys from Whitmore and Kessler, the firm Victoria had kept on retainer for 11 years. They filed into the 16th floor conference room,
with briefcases and coffee cups, and the particular silence that lawyers carry when they know the situation is serious. Victoria was already there. She hadn't gone home. She hadn't changed clothes. She'd spent the last 5 hours at her desk, compiling evidence, and when the attorney sat down, she slid the folder across the table without preamble. "Read it," she said. David Whitmore, the senior partner, opened the folder. He read for 10 minutes. Nobody spoke. When he finished, he removed his glasses and looked at Victoria with the expression of a man who had seen a lot of corporate catastrophes and understood immediately that this one was going to be ugly. "You terminated Harper based entirely on Cross's recommendation?" "Yes." "Without independently verifying the evidence?" "Yes." "And Cross had access to the trading system, the email server, and the authority to suppress internal reports?" "He had all of it. I gave him all of it." David closed the folder. "Victoria, I have to be direct with you. When the SEC sees this, they're not just going to go after Leonard Cross. They're going to ask why the CEO of a major investment firm signed a termination on Christmas Eve without conducting even a basic review of the underlying evidence. They're going to ask what internal controls failed. And they're going to ask whether this company's leadership structure enabled the fraud." "I know. Are you prepared for what that means?" "I'm prepared to tell the truth. That's why you're here." David exchanged a look with his colleagues. "All right, here's what we do. We contact the SEC this morning. We submit everything voluntarily. Full cooperation. That gives us the best chance of controlling the narrative and demonstrating good faith. But Victoria, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer." "Ask." "Is there anything else? Any other decisions? Any other terminations? Any other situations where Leonard Cross influenced your judgment without your knowledge?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. She'd spent the last 5 hours asking herself that same question. "I don't know, and that's the truth. I trusted Leonard. I trusted him for 12 years. If he manipulated this situation, he could have manipulated others. I won't know until we do a full audit." "Then that's what we recommend. Full internal audit. Independent forensics team. And we bring in the SEC before the press gets wind of this. Because if the media breaks this story before we self-report, we lose every advantage." "Do it." David picked up his phone. "I'll have the SEC on the line within the hour." Victoria nodded. Then she said something that made every attorney in the room look up. "I also want to call Daniel Harper." David paused. "Victoria, from a legal standpoint, I would strongly advise against direct contact with Harper at this stage. He may already have counsel. He may have already filed a whistleblower complaint. Anything you say to him could complicate the company's position." "I'm not calling him to protect the company's position. I'm calling him because I owe him that." "Victoria." "David, I fired that man on Christmas Eve in front of his daughter. I didn't ask him a single question. I didn't read a single one of his reports. I took the word of the man who committed the fraud, and I used it to destroy the career of the man who tried to stop it. I am going to call him. The question is whether you want to be in the room when I do." David looked at her for a long time. He'd represented Victoria Hale for over a decade. He'd seen her negotiate billion-dollar deals without blinking. He'd seen her face hostile boards and congressional committees and media firestorms with the composure of a woman who believed she was always, fundamentally, right. He had never seen her like this. "We'll be in the room," he said. At 7:45 a.m., 2 agents from the SEC's Division of Enforcement were on a conference call with Victoria's legal team. By 8:30, a formal voluntary disclosure had been initiated. By 9,
an independent forensic accounting firm had been retained to conduct a full audit of Northbridge Capital's trading operations for the past 18 months.
And at 9:15, two federal agents walked into the lobby of Northbridge Capital. They took the elevator to the 15th floor. They turned left down the corridor that led to the office of the Vice President of Finance. Leonard Cross's assistant stood up when she saw them. "Can I help you?" "We're here for Mr. Cross." "Do you have an appointment?" The taller agent showed his badge. "We don't need one." Leonard was on the phone when they opened his door. He looked up, saw the badges, and his face went through 3 stages in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, fear. "Leonard Cross?" "Yes." "Federal agents, we have a warrant for your arrest in connection with securities fraud, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. Please stand up and put your hands where we can see them." Leonard's phone slipped from his hand. It clattered on the desk. The person on the other end was still talking. "There must be a mistake," Leonard said. His voice cracked on the last word. "I need to call my attorney." "You'll have the opportunity to contact counsel after processing. Please stand up, sir." Leonard stood. His legs were shaking. His eyes darted to the door, where 3 employees had already gathered, watching. The agent walked behind him and placed handcuffs on his wrists. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Leonard's face was gray. His mouth moved, but no words came out. The agents guided him around his desk, through his office door, and into the corridor. The walk from his office to the elevator was approximately 40 steps. In those 40 steps, Leonard Cross passed 9 employees. Every one of them watched. Nobody said a word. The elevator doors opened. The agents stepped in with Leonard between them. The doors closed. And just like that, 12 years of lies ended in 40 steps and a pair of handcuffs. By noon, every major news outlet had the story. The headlines hit fast and they hit hard. Financial fraud, insider manipulation, a wrongful termination, a single father fired on Christmas Eve. The details were exactly the kind of story that media loves. Powerful executive caught, innocent worker vindicated, a child in the middle of it all. Victoria's phone didn't stop ringing. Board members, investors, reporters, regulators. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted to know how this happened under her watch. The board called an emergency meeting for 5 o'clock that afternoon. Victoria sat at the head of the table and faced 9 directors who ranged from furious to terrified. The chairman, Robert Ainsley, spoke first. "Victoria, I've been on this board for 14 years. I have never seen a situation this damaging. Walk us through it." Victoria didn't deflect. She didn't spin. She didn't soften. Leonard Cross executed unauthorized trades over an 8-week period using his administrative credentials. The total exposure was approximately $40 million. When the losses surfaced, he fabricated evidence pointing to Daniel Harper's department. He suppressed Harper's internal reports. He deleted emails from the company's server. And he presented me with a narrative that I accepted without independent verification. "Why didn't you verify it?" asked Helen Torres, the longest-serving director. "Because I trusted Leonard. He'd been my vice president of finance for 12 years. He'd never given me a reason to doubt him. And when he brought me evidence of a problem and a solution in the same conversation, I treated it as efficient crisis management instead of what it actually was, a cover-up." "And Harper, the man you fired?" "Daniel Harper did everything right. He identified the fraud. He reported it through proper channels. He sent 47 emails to Leonard documenting the unauthorized trades.
He requested independent audits 3 times. Every one of those warnings was buried by the man committing the crime. Helen leaned forward. "And you terminated him on Christmas Eve?" "Yes." "While his daughter was in the building?" Victoria's voice held, but barely. "Yes." Robert Ainsley took off his glasses and pressed his fingers to the bridge of his nose. "Victoria, the press is going to crucify us. The SEC is going to audit every trade we've made in the last 5 years. Our stock is already down 11% since this morning. Investors are calling for your resignation." "I know." "What do you propose?" Victoria opened a second folder. She'd written this during the hours before dawn, after the tears, and before the lawyers. First, full cooperation with the SEC. No resistance, no delays, no negotiated disclosures. We open every book and every file. Robert nodded. Second, I will make a public statement to the entire company. Not through PR, not through legal. Me, personally. I will explain what happened, take full responsibility for my failure in judgment, and apologize to Daniel Harper by name. Helen raised an eyebrow. Legal approved that? Legal advised against it. I overruled them. Why? Because it's the truth. And because if I hide behind lawyers right now, I'm doing exactly what Leonard did. I'm protecting myself at someone else's expense. The room was silent. Third, structural reform. Independent whistleblower protection. Mandatory executive-level audits conducted by outside firms. Direct reporting lines from compliance to the board, bypassing all C-suite executives, including me. And full transparency with regulators going forward. Robert looked around the table. Does anyone object? No one spoke. All right. When do you want to address the company? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. All hands. And Harper? I'm calling him today. The meeting adjourned. Victoria went back to her office. She sat behind her desk and picked up the phone. Her hand hovered over the number. She had negotiated with heads of state. She had testified before Congress. She had fired executives who made twice her salary without losing sleep. But this call terrified her. Because this wasn't business. This was something she couldn't fix with money, or strategy, or authority. This was a man she'd wronged, deeply and personally. And no amount of corporate restructuring could undo the damage she'd done to his life. She dialed. It rang 4 times. Hello? Daniel's voice, guarded, tired. The voice of a man who'd spent 2 months fighting a battle no one could see. Daniel, this is Victoria Hale. Silence. Long, heavy silence. I know what you're going to say, he said finally. My lawyer already called me. Then you know that Leonard was arrested this morning. I know. Daniel, I need to say something to you, and I need you to hear it. I'm listening. Victoria gripped the phone. I was wrong. Not partially wrong. Not wrong because of bad information. I was fundamentally wrong. You tried to protect this company. You did your job. You followed every protocol. And I fired you because I trusted the wrong man, and I didn't have the humility to question my own judgment. Daniel didn't respond. I terminated you on Christmas Eve while your daughter was sitting in my lobby. I didn't ask you a single question about your reports. I didn't review your emails. I didn't check the server logs. I made a decision based on someone else's lies, and that decision destroyed your livelihood and your reputation. Still silence. I can't undo that. I know I can't undo that. But I want you to know that I am going to stand in front of this entire company tomorrow and say your name and tell them what happened. And I am going to make sure that everyone who works at Northbridge Capital understands that you were not the failure. I was. Daniel exhaled. She could hear it through the phone, a slow, shaking breath, like a man letting go of something he'd been carrying for a long time. "My daughter asks about you," he said quietly. "She doesn't understand why the boss lady fired her daddy. I've tried to explain it 100 different ways. None of them make sense to an 8-year-old. Because it doesn't make sense." "No, it doesn't. Do you know what I did the night you fired me? I went home and made Christmas cookies with my daughter. I read her a bedtime story. I tucked her in. And then I sat at my kitchen table and stared at 47 emails that proved I was innocent, and I wondered if anyone would ever read them." Victoria pressed her hand against her eyes. "I'm reading them now. 2 months too late." "I know." Another pause. She could hear Emily in the background, asking Daniel who was on the phone. He covered the receiver and said, "Just a work call, sweetheart." When he came back, his voice was steadier. "What do you want from me, Victoria?" "I want to offer you your position back. Full back pay from the date of termination. A formal letter clearing your record. And a promotion." A promotion. "I'm creating a new division, whistleblower protection. Independent oversight of all executive-level financial operations. Direct reporting authority to the board. I want you to lead it." Daniel laughed, not a happy laugh, a disbelieving one. "You fired me for doing the right thing, and now you want to give me a promotion for doing the right thing." "Yes, because doing the right thing should be rewarded, not punished. And because there is nobody in this company or outside of it who I trust more to hold us accountable." "You don't even know me. I know that you stopped on a frozen highway to help the woman who ruined your life. I know that you sent your daughter to a charity gala with a handwritten note because you still believed the truth mattered. And I know that you had every reason to go to the press, to burn this company to the ground. And you didn't. You went to a lawyer. You went to the SEC. You followed the rules even when the rules had failed you." Daniel was quiet for a long time. "I need to think about it." "Take all the time you need." "And Victoria." "Yes?" "Tomorrow, when you stand in front of that company, don't do it for PR. Don't do it because your lawyers told you it would look good. Do it because it's right." "That's exactly why I'm doing it." "Then I'll be watching." He hung up. Victoria sat with the phone pressed against her ear for another 10 seconds, listening to the dead line. Then she set it down and stared out the window. The next morning, at 9 a.m., every employee at Northbridge Capital gathered in the main auditorium on the second floor. It was standing room only. People lined the walls. The energy in the room was tense, confused, scared. They'd all seen the news. They'd all watched Leonard Cross get walked out in handcuffs. They all wanted to know what was happening to their company and their jobs. Victoria walked to the front of the room. No podium, no notes, no teleprompter. She stood there and looked at them. "I'm not going to read a prepared statement," she said. "I'm going to tell you what happened." The room went still. 2 months ago, I fired Daniel Harper on Christmas Eve. I did it because Leonard Cross told me that Daniel's department was responsible for a $40 million loss. I didn't verify the evidence. I didn't review Daniel's reports. I didn't ask him a single question. I signed the termination letter, and I sent him home with a box and his 8-year-old daughter. She paused. The silence was absolute. That was the worst decision I have ever made. Not because of the legal exposure, not because of the financial damage, because it was wrong. Daniel Harper spent months trying to warn us about a fraud that was happening inside this building. He sent 47 emails.
He filed risk reports. He requested audits. He did everything that a responsible, ethical employee is supposed to do. And he was punished for it. By me. Her voice cracked on the last two words. She didn't try to hide it. Leonard Cross committed the fraud. He used his access to manipulate trades, falsify records, and frame an innocent man. And I let it happen because I trusted authority instead of evidence. I trusted rank instead of truth. And I was so confident in my own judgment that I never stopped to ask the one question that would have changed everything. What if I'm wrong? She looked across the room. I am standing here today to tell you that I was wrong. And I am sorry. I am sorry to Daniel Harper. I am sorry to his daughter. And I am sorry to every person in this room, because you deserved a leader who would protect the truth. And instead, you got one who protected her own certainty. Nobody moved. Starting today, this company is changing. We are implementing independent whistleblower protections. We are requiring executive-level audits by outside firms. We are creating direct reporting lines from compliance to the board. And we are building a culture where the person who raises a concern is protected, not eliminated. She took a breath. I can't undo what I did to Daniel Harper, but I can make sure it never happens to anyone else in this company. That's not a promise from PR. That's a promise from me. She stood there for a moment. The room was still silent. Then, from the back of the auditorium, someone started clapping. Slowly. One person. Then another. Then a third. Then the entire room. Victoria didn't smile. She didn't wave. She stood there and absorbed it, not as applause, but as a reminder of how much she had to rebuild. When the room cleared, she went back to her office. She sat down. She picked up her phone. One text message from Daniel. It said, "I watched. Thank you." She read it twice. Then she put the phone down and started working on the reforms she'd promised. Because promises without action are just better-dressed lies. And Victoria Hale was done lying. 3 blocks away, in a small apartment in Queens, Daniel Harper read about the speech on his laptop while Emily ate cereal at the kitchen table. "Daddy, what are you reading?" "Something from work." "You don't have work." He looked at her. "I might." "Really?" "Maybe. We'll see." Emily grinned. "I told you that you always figure things out." Daniel closed the laptop. He picked up his phone and called Ray Donovan. "Ray, it's Daniel." "I saw the news. You okay?" "She called me yesterday. Offered me my job back. Back pay, a promotion." "I know. Her lawyers called my office an hour after she called you. They're drafting a formal offer. Daniel, the terms are very favorable." "I'm not doing it for the terms." "I know you're not, but the terms matter. Full back pay from December 24th. Cleared record. Senior director title. And the SEC has confirmed your whistleblower filing, which means you're protected under federal law from this point forward." Daniel was quiet. "You don't have to decide today," Ray said. "I know. But Daniel, I've been doing this a long time. What she did yesterday, standing in front of that company and admitting she was wrong, that's rare. Most executives in her position would hide behind a press release. She didn't. That matters." "Yeah," Daniel said. "It does." He hung up and sat at the kitchen table across from his daughter. Emily looked at him with a mouthful of cereal. "Is everything okay, Daddy?" "Everything is getting better, Em." "Good. Because I need new shoes. Mine have a hole." Daniel laughed. A real one this time. The kind that starts in your chest and works its way up, and reminds you that even after everything, some things are simple and good and exactly the way they should be. "We'll get you new shoes," he said. "Promise?" "Promise." Daniel didn't say yes right away. He let 3 weeks pass, then 4, then 6. Victoria's lawyers sent the formal offer on the second day. Ray Donovan reviewed it, called it the strongest whistleblower reinstatement package he'd seen in 20 years, and told Daniel he'd be a fool to turn it down. Daniel didn't disagree, but he wasn't ready, because going back to that building meant walking through the same lobby where Emily had watched him leave with a cardboard box. It meant riding the same elevator, sitting in the same hallways where people had looked through him like he was already gone before he'd even packed his desk. It meant trusting a system that had chewed him up and spit him out without blinking. And Daniel Harper did not give trust easily anymore. So he waited. He thought. He took Emily to school every morning and picked her up every afternoon. He cooked dinner. He helped with homework. He sat in the chair beside her bed at night and read whatever book she handed him, because those were the hours that mattered most, and no job title in the world was worth more than being present for his daughter. But at night, after she fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table and thought about Northbridge Capital. He thought about the people still working there, the junior analysts, the compliance officers, the men and women on the lower floors who did their jobs honestly every day and had no idea how close they'd come to being caught in the same machinery that had crushed him. He thought about what would happen if someone else found something wrong. Who would they tell? Who would protect them? Who would make sure their emails didn't get deleted and their reports didn't get buried? And he realized that was the answer. Not revenge, not vindication, not even money. Protection. He called Ray Donovan on a Tuesday morning in late April. "I'm going back," Daniel said. "Good. I'll call the legal team." "Wait, I have conditions." "Go ahead." "First, I report directly to the board, not to Victoria, not to any executive. The board." "That's unusual, but given the circumstances, they'll agree." "Second, any employee who files an internal concern gets automatic protection. No transfers, no reassignments, no performance reviews triggered within 60 days of a complaint. If they're retaliated against, I have the authority to escalate directly to the SEC. They're going to push back on that. Then I don't go back." Ray paused. "What else?" "Family first scheduling. I pick my daughter up from school at 3:15 every day. I don't care what meeting is happening. I don't care what crisis is unfolding. At 3 o'clock, I leave. Emily lost her mother. She's not losing her father to a building. Daniel, you know they're going to have a hard time with that. Then they can find someone else. Anything else? One more thing. Zero tolerance for retaliation. If anyone in that company, at any level, retaliates against a whistleblower, I have the authority to recommend immediate termination. No review process, no committee. Immediate." Ray exhaled. "You're not making this easy." "It shouldn't be easy. If it were easy, they wouldn't need me." Ray called Northbridge's legal team that afternoon. The negotiations took 9 days. Victoria's lawyers pushed back on the direct board reporting. Daniel held firm. They pushed back on the retaliation authority. Daniel held firm. They pushed back on the family-first scheduling. Victoria overruled her own legal team on that one personally. "Give him everything he wants," she told David Whitmore. "Victoria, the scheduling provision alone sets a precedent that could affect every senior director in the company." "Good. Maybe it should." "This is going to cost you political capital with the board." "I don't care about political capital. I care about doing the right thing for once.
Give him the terms. On May 1st, Daniel Harper signed the offer letter. Senior Director, Whistleblower Protection Division. Direct reporting authority to the Northbridge Capital Board of Directors. Full back pay from December 24th. Cleared personnel record. And every condition he'd asked for, in writing, without a single compromise. He started on May 15th, a Monday. That morning, he stood outside Northbridge Capital at 8:45. The building looked the same, glass and steel. The company name in polished letters above the entrance. People flowing in and out through the revolving door with coffee cups and badges and the hurried energy of another workday. Daniel stood on the sidewalk and stared at those doors. The last time he'd walked through them, he was carrying a cardboard box and holding his daughter's hand and trying not to fall apart. The security guard had watched him go. The receptionist had looked away. The Christmas music had still been playing. That was 5 months ago. He took a breath. He adjusted his tie. And he walked in. The lobby was different now. Not physically. The same marble floors, the same reception desk, the same elevators. But it felt different. Or maybe he felt different. Maybe the building hadn't changed at all, and the only thing that was different was the man walking through it. He took the elevator to the 14th floor, his old floor. They'd given him a corner office, 2 doors down from where his cubicle used to be. His name was already on the door. Senior Director, Whistleblower Protection Division. He put his bag down. He sat in the chair. He looked at the empty desk and the blank walls and the window that looked out over the same city that had almost swallowed him whole. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Bell. "Welcome back, brother. Lunch is on me." Daniel smiled. At 9:30, Victoria knocked on his open door. She stood in the doorway, not entering. It was a small gesture, but Daniel noticed it. She was asking permission to be in his space. The CEO of the company, asking permission of a man she'd fired 5 months ago. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning. Is everything in order? Do you need anything?" "I need people to trust this office. That's going to take time." "I know." "Victoria, I want to be honest with you about something." "Please." "I didn't come back for you. I didn't come back because of the apology or the speech or the money. I came back because somewhere in this building, right now, there is someone who sees something wrong and is afraid to say anything. They're afraid because they saw what happened to me. They're afraid because they know that in most companies, the person who speaks up is the person who gets destroyed." Victoria listened without moving. "I came back to be the person I needed and didn't have. That's it. That's the only reason." Victoria nodded slowly. "Then I think you're exactly where you should be." She turned to leave. "Victoria," she stopped. "Thank you for listening, even if it took a while." Something crossed her face. Pain, maybe, or gratitude, or both. She nodded once and walked away. Daniel spent the first 2 weeks meeting with every department head in the company. He sat with compliance officers and traders and IT staff and HR managers. He listened more than he talked. He asked questions, simple ones. Who do you report concerns to? Do you trust that process? Have you ever been afraid to speak up? The answers were revealing. Most employees said they trusted their immediate supervisors. But when asked whether they'd report a concern about a senior executive, the room always got quiet. People looked at their hands. They shrugged. They changed the subject. Daniel understood that silence. He'd lived inside it. He built the division from the ground up. He created an anonymous reporting system with third-party oversight. He established response timelines. He required that every concern be logged, tracked, and resolved within 30 days. He set up quarterly reviews with the board, and he personally reviewed every complaint that came through the system, because he knew from experience that the difference between a company that protects its people and one that destroys them often comes down to whether a single human being is paying attention. In June, the first major test came. A junior analyst named Priya Sharma filed a complaint through the new system. She reported that a managing director in the fixed income division was pressuring her team to alter risk assessments to make certain products look safer than they were. She had emails, she had meeting notes, she had dates and names. She was terrified. Daniel met with her in his office on a Wednesday afternoon. She sat across from him with her hands folded tightly in her lap, and he could see it in her eyes. The same fear he'd felt when he first realized something was wrong and didn't know who to tell. Priya, I want you to understand something. Nothing is going to happen to you because you filed this complaint. Not today, not next week, not ever. That's not a suggestion. That's a guarantee backed by the board of directors and federal whistleblower protection. People say that, she said quietly, but I've heard what happened to the last person who reported something. You're talking about me. She looked up. Everyone knows what happened to you, Mr. Harper. Then everyone knows that I'm sitting in this chair right now, and the man who tried to silence me is sitting in a federal holding facility. That's not a story about how the system fails. That's a story about what happens when someone is brave enough to tell the truth, even when it costs them. Priya's eyes filled. She blinked it back. I'm not brave. I'm scared. Those aren't mutually exclusive. I was scared too. I was scared every single day for 2 months. But I had the evidence, and I had my daughter looking at me every night. And I knew that if I didn't do the right thing, I'd have to explain to her someday why I chose silence. Priya took a breath. What happens now? Now I take your complaint to the board. An independent team investigates. If your concerns are verified, the managing director will be held accountable, and your identity will be protected throughout the entire process. You promise? Daniel leaned forward. I promise, and I don't make promises I can't keep. I've got an 8-year-old who holds me to every single one. Priya laughed, a small laugh, nervous and relieved at the same time. The investigation took 3 weeks. Priya's concerns were confirmed. The managing director was terminated. No retaliation, no leaks, no damage to Priya's career. Word traveled fast. By September, the Whistleblower Protection Division had received 14 complaints. 11 were substantiated, 3 resulted in policy changes, 2 resulted in terminations, and not a single employee who filed a complaint experienced any form of retaliation. Daniel reviewed every case personally. He stayed late when he needed to. He made calls on weekends when something was urgent. But at 3 o'clock every afternoon, no matter what was happening, he saved his work, closed his laptop, and walked out of Northbridge Capital to pick up his daughter from school. Nobody questioned it. In October, Northbridge held its annual Take Your Child to Work Day. It was the first one since the scandal. The company had debated whether to hold it at all, given everything that had happened. Victoria made the decision herself. We're holding it, she said, because this company is not defined by its worst moment. It's defined by what it does after. Daniel brought Emily. They walked through the revolving door together at 8:30 in the morning. Emily was wearing her red coat, the same one she'd worn on Christmas Eve. She held her father's hand and looked up at the lobby with wide eyes. This is where you work now? This is where I work now. It's really big. It is. Is the boss lady here? Her name is Victoria, and yes, she's here. Can I say hi? Daniel smiled. I think she'd like that. They took the elevator to the 14th floor. Emily walked into Daniel's office and immediately spotted the framed drawing on his desk. It was the one she'd made back in January, the one of their apartment with the Christmas tree and the stick figure version of Daniel with a big smile. "You kept it." "Of course I kept it. It's the best thing in this office." Emily beamed. Then she looked at the nameplate on his door. She read it slowly, sounding out the words. Senior Director, Whistle, Blower, Protection. That's right. What does that mean? Daniel knelt beside her. It means that if someone at this company sees something wrong, something dishonest or unfair, they can come to me, and I make sure they're safe. I make sure nobody punishes them for telling the truth. Emily thought about that. Like what happened to you? Exactly like what happened to me. So you make sure it doesn't happen to other people? That's the job. Emily nodded with the serious expression of a child who's just understood something important. That's a really good job, Daddy. Yeah, he said. It is. At 10 o'clock, Victoria came to the 14th floor. She was walking the hallways, greeting employees and their children, the way she did every year. When she reached Daniel's office, she stopped. Emily saw her first. "Hi, Victoria." Victoria's composure slipped for just a moment. Her eyes softened in a way that nobody in that building had ever seen before. "Hi, Emily. I'm glad you're here. Daddy says you're the boss." "I'm one of them. But your daddy is in charge of something very important, too." Emily nodded. "He makes sure people don't get in trouble for telling the truth." Victoria looked at Daniel. He looked back at her. And in that look, something passed between them that didn't need words. An understanding. An acknowledgement. Not forgiveness exactly. That was still complicated. And Daniel wasn't sure forgiveness was even the right word for what had happened between them. But something close to it. Something that said, "We both know what happened, and we're both trying to do better." "That's exactly what he does," Victoria said. Emily reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I made you something." Victoria took it. She unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing. 2 stick figures standing side by side in front of a tall building. One was a man with brown hair. The other was a woman in a black dress. Between them, holding both their hands, was a small girl in a red coat. Underneath, in Emily's careful handwriting, it said, "Good people fix things." Victoria stared at that drawing for a long time. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes glistened. She folded it carefully and held it against her chest. "Thank you, Emily. I'm going to keep this." "You can put it on your desk. That's what Daddy did." "That's exactly what I'm going to do." Victoria walked away. Daniel watched her go. He saw her pause at the end of the corridor, press the drawing against her chest one more time, and take a breath before turning the corner. Later that morning, Daniel and Emily walked through the lobby together. The same lobby where, 5 months ago, a little girl in a red coat had watched her father lose everything. The same marble floors, the same glass walls, the same revolving door. But everything was different. Because the man walking through that lobby wasn't a scapegoat anymore. He wasn't a name on a termination letter. He wasn't a casualty of someone else's greed. He was the person who told the truth when the truth was dangerous. He was the person who stopped on a frozen highway to help the woman who fired him. He was the person who chose patience over rage and evidence over emotion, and his daughter over his pride. And he was still standing. Emily tugged his hand. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "I like your new job." "I like it too, Em." "And Daddy?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad you didn't give up." Daniel squeezed her hand.
Me too, sweetheart. They walked through the revolving door and into the morning sunlight. The city hummed around them. Taxis honked. People rushed past. The world moved on the way it always does, indifferent and enormous and completely unaware that inside one glass building, something important had changed. Not because a corporation had been reformed, not because a criminal had been caught, not because a CEO had given a speech, because one man, one ordinary, quiet, stubborn man, had refused to let a lie stand. He didn't have power. He didn't have connections. He didn't have money or influence or a seat at any table that mattered. He had the truth. And he had a little girl who believed in him. And that was enough. Months later, a reporter from the Financial Times asked Victoria Hale what she'd learned from the Northbridge scandal. She sat in her office, the same office where she'd signed Daniel's termination, and thought for a long time before answering. I learned that the most dangerous thing a leader can do is assume they're right. I learned that efficiency without empathy is cruelty. I learned that the people you think are disposable might be the only ones willing to save you from yourself. And I learned it from a man I wronged and a child who asked me one question that I couldn't answer. What was the question? Victoria looked at the drawing on her desk. 2 stick figures and a girl in a red coat. Good people fix things. She asked me if someone had tricked me, and the truth is, the person who tricked me most was myself. The reporter wrote that down. The article ran the following week. It was shared 400,000 times. But none of that mattered to Daniel Harper. What mattered was picking Emily up at 3:15. What mattered was dinner at the kitchen table with 2 plates and 2 glasses and 2 napkins folded into triangles. What mattered was reading her a bedtime story and kissing her forehead and hearing her say, "I love you, Daddy." What mattered was that he had done the right thing, not because it was rewarded, not because it worked out, but because it was right. And that is the truth that this story leaves behind. Corporate power without accountability will always find someone to sacrifice. Integrity will always cost something before it pays anything back. Children will always see what adults refuse to see. And real leadership does not begin with confidence or strategy or authority. Real leadership begins the moment you stop protecting yourself and start protecting the truth. Daniel Harper learned that in a small apartment in Queens on Christmas Eve, sitting at a kitchen table with 47 emails and a sleeping daughter in the next room. Victoria Hale learned it on a frozen highway from a man with jumper cables who had every reason to keep driving. And if you've listened this far, maybe you've learned it too. Not every story ends with justice. Not every wrong gets made right. But every single time someone chooses truth over silence, the world shifts. Just a little. Just enough. And that is always, always enough.